Hello and welcome. The ACMI and the ACTF would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we are talking to you today, the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We'd love to know where you are, so please add the country that you're sitting in into the chat. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from all nations of this land.
We're talking about storytelling today, and we'd also like to acknowledge First Nations people as the original and ongoing storytellers of this land. Hi everyone, I'm Janine from the Australian Children's Television Foundation, also known as the ACTF.
And hello, I'm Kate. I'm from ACMI, the Australia's National Screen Museum for Screen Culture. We celebrate video games, film, animation, TV and all other forms of art on the screen. We're very excited to be presenting this virtual workshop to you today with the ACTF.
Thanks, Kate. And thanks all of you for joining us today. We're going to be asking you some questions throughout the session. So teachers, it would be great if you could please share your students' ideas and thoughts with us in the chat.
And we have some people you can't see today helping us. We have Simon who's helping with AV and Bridget who will be chatting and helping you out in the chat. So thanks to Simon and Bridget as well. So today we're coming to you as part of Media Literacy Week. So students all over the world today and this week are learning about media literacy. And that's what we'll be learning about with you today as well. So we're going to begin by asking a very big question of you. What does media literacy mean? And maybe as a tip or a starting point, we could say that media can be described as anything that we make that conveys a message. So perhaps if you can have a think about what media literacy means, talk to each other and take a minute to think and discuss and then share what you come up with in the chat.
Thanks, Kate. I know I've heard media literacy spoken about as looking for bias in the news, checking your sources. There's lots of other things people might have had in their classroom. I've heard a lot about fake news. That's
yes,
a lot of, that's media literacy, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, checking your sources and also just questioning, being a critical viewer and thinking about, you know, does this sound true? How could I check and find out? Oh, look, we've got some good responses in the chat. Yes, thinking about who created the message and being thoughtful about the information that we receive. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, and more checking your facts and where those sources came from. Yes, we totally agree. I've heard that before for media literacy as well. So it seems that our audience already has some great media literacy skills, but we're going to dive in a little deeper today as well. So as you've all suggested, media literacy helps us think critically about the news and factual information and to consider who created the message and why, whether they can be trusted. And this is all super important. But did you know that media literacy and critical thinking are also important for entertainment media? So those shows that we watch when we want to relax and have fun, they're also constructions in the media that we can think actively and critically about what we view.
Yeah, so what are examples of what you enjoy watching?
Heaps. You know, I work in children's TV, so I watch a lot of children's TV. I love the show The Investigators, and when I was younger, I used to love the show Round the Twist, which is an oldie but a goodie. And I also love Japanese animated movies. I watch a lot in my free time.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you?
Too. Well, I'm a big fan of reality TV and documentary, actually. So I like watching The Block with my family, and sometimes we watch documentaries like 2040 and things like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we'd love to know some of the shows that you enjoy watching at home as well. But yeah, so these shows, while they might not be like news and they're not presenting current affairs, they are also communicating ideas and have the power to influence the audiences. This is because TV creators make choices about the stories they're going to tell us about the world, and they make choices about the characters and the ideas that they're showing us. So these choices are about representing the world to viewers in a certain way and including certain points of view. So today we're going to be digging a little bit deeper into this idea of media literacy and representation. By taking a look at some of our favourite children's TV shows. So have you heard the word media representation before? Talk to the person next to you, have a have a think, have a bit of a chat, see if you can come up with some ideas about what media representation means, and share some of these ideas with your class, and perhaps the teacher can put some of your answers into the chat now. Someone likes to watch AFL. Yep. It's quite a popular one in the cricket in our house.
I guess the commentary for sports shows can definitely influence what the viewer thinks, can't it? Commentators in sports shows definitely put their spin on what's happening and what they think is good or bad, or who's the best, or who's likely to win. So I think commentators in sports shows definitely contribute to representation. Yeah,
something we're hearing a lot about in the news at the moment is sponsorship and sport as well. And so values play out in terms of what company might support a netball team or things like that. So again, we're always thinking much wider than just what we're seeing on the screen, because that all plays into media representation. So let's have a look. Play School. Someone likes to watch Play School. Oh, I'm a big fan of Play School, always have been. Someone says media representation is when people see stuff and report stuff. Yes, that is true. That's journalism and current affairs. Yep. But we do hear from citizen journalists, don't we, as well, during a lot of our news shows now.
Yep. We've got another comment here. So someone else thinks media representation is when real life things happen on the news, in documentaries, biographical information. So lots of ideas coming through in the chat. Thank you, everybody. And to add to your great ideas, Kate and I are going to give our definition. We workshopped this one earlier. So we're saying media representation means the way in which the media portrays or represents people, communities, places, experiences and ideas from a particular perspective or point of view.
So perhaps to break down media representation a little bit, we can start to think first of all about place and the way that the media and different shows can show place on screen, or it can be represented on television. So in books, representations are often described and created through written language. But on TV, we see place constructed out of many different elements. So place is created with camera shots, with lighting, editing, music, sound, all of these things work together. The costumes, acting, the actors' dialogue can all influence how place seems on screen and how we respond to it. So to learn more, let's hear from expert Paul Gartside from the ACTF. Paul is a writer who has written many scripts for television. At the ACTF, he reviews scripts, so he reads scripts that other people have written for TV shows, and he gives feedback to help make the show the best it can be. Paul's going to talk about representations of place on television and those representations, how those representations can influence the audience's response to the story.
Hello, my name's Paul and I'm a development manager at the ACTF. I'm also a TV writer. I've worked on shows like Neighbours, the preschool show The Wonder Gang, and the ABC Me podcast McElroy Uncovered. That was a really interesting project because obviously as a podcast there were no visuals to tell the story, so we had to establish things like characters, themes and place only using sound. Place is one of the most important elements a creator can think about when they're putting together their story or piece of media. Where is this piece of media set? The way you establish your setting and represent your place can tell your audience an awful lot about the characters and the kind of story you're telling them, even the themes. So for example, if you think about where your character lives, what does their home look like? What kind of place is that? That tells you a lot about who that character is and what their life is like. At a glance, the place can tell you whether the story is set in the real world, where people are going to be doing things like going to school, going to the supermarket, hanging out with friends at home, or is it a fantastical story where the characters are going to be visiting places the storyteller has imagined. The place can also tell us immediately whether the story is set in the past, the present, or the future. And it can speak to the themes. Think about in your story whether the place is an appealing place that the audience would kind of be eager to go and visit and join in the story, or is it deliberately being established as an unappealing place in some way, and what is that telling you about the story? When you're thinking about place, it's also important to consider that there are some places that have really special significance for particular individuals or communities. That can be historical significance, an emotional, personal significance, or even a religious significance. For example, there are some stories that it just wouldn't be respectful to set inside a church, or some stories that might be inappropriate to set in a particular place that has historical significance for First Nations people. So as storytellers, it's really important that we think about the kind of places we're setting our stories and the extra meanings behind that. Sometimes there's even particular permissions or guidelines that you have to follow when you're setting a story in a particular place. And sometimes there are places that really only certain people who have that connection to the place should even tell stories set there. So these are all really important things to think about when deciding about how you're going to depict the place of your story or piece of media. So now we're going to watch a clip from the early episodes of the show Dance Academy. So after you watch, have a think about the kind of places you're being shown, and most importantly, how the creators are choosing to show them, what choices have the creators made, and how are those impacting how we feel about the places we're watching.
Go on. I know you don't think you're ready, but you are. I can't take care of you forever.
It's time.
So I got in to Dance Academy. And life is about to become spectacular. The only downside is leaving home. Mine is pretty special. There's only 300 people in the town, so every one of us is known for something. You might be a footballer, or the fastest cheerer, or me. I've never been the new kid before, and suddenly it's like the slate has been wiped clean. And I've no longer got a history. Just a future.
Oi.
Sorry.
Oh, great. I think I'm going to be distracted by that pet kangaroo. I wish I had a pet kangaroo. So that clip, you'll agree, has two very different representations of place. And Paul asked you to think about how the media creators shaped those representations. When you're watching those clips, there's so much to think about and notice. Did you notice how the place at Tara's country home was established with that opening shot, which showed her big, beautiful country house with all the green around it? That's referred to as an establishing shot, and we saw a different establishing shot when the story moved to Sydney, and we could see that we were now in the big city. So using your worksheet or just chatting to somebody nearby, we'd like you to share your thoughts on these TV representations. You're very welcome to share your ideas in the chat. We'd love to hear what you think. And let's just take 3 minutes for that activity now. Whether you've got your worksheet or you look at the answers up on the screen, we'll give you a few minutes. First, we're going to play that Dance Academy clip so that you can pay careful attention.
Go on. I know you don't think you're ready, but you are. I can't take care of you forever.
It's time.
So I got in to Dance Academy. And life is about to become spectacular. The only downside is leaving home. Mine is pretty special. There's only 300 people in the town, so every one of us is known for something. You might be a footballer, or the fastest cheerer, or me. I've never been the new kid before, and suddenly it's like the slate has been wiped clean. And I've no longer got a history. Just a future.
Oi.
Sorry. Sorry.
Welcome back. How did you go? We're having a look at some of your comments in the chat, some of the things that you've picked up on. Yes, in the country, yes, it's great. Some of you have noticed the wide shot of Tara's family home. That's something we call an extreme long shot, because it includes the surrounding environment that tells us that she lives in the country. She's had a really beautiful country existence. Yep, prestigious. Historical, yes. Country style. The music was very peaceful. Nice, neat, green, old, calm, quiet and open. That's right, when it was in the country town.
I thought it looked really peaceful, didn't it? Her country home. There was all that space. It just seemed like a peaceful and quiet kind of place to live.
Yeah, that's right. Showed her house. And yeah, that's right. The dialogue, someone said here that the dialogue, initially she says, she's talking to the Joey and she says, you don't think you're ready, but you are. And it's kind of like she's talking to herself, getting herself ready, isn't it? Yeah.
Someone here at ACMI actually noticed that the music got really exciting for the city sequence. When we went to Sydney, there were more drums, there was more upbeat music. So that music really helped us, you helped the representation of an exciting, thrilling kind of place to be, didn't it?
That's it. And the driving in the car, like the helicopter shot actually pushes right into the bridge, and then the car's driving. So it's all about kind of moving forward to her next chapter. Yeah, and it does. It has a really exciting feel, and then she's going up the stairs and there's this shot of her looking really tiny in this big city. So yeah.
Some other nice observations from the chat. Someone said that the camera shots in the city are wide, but in the country they're close up, so they're a bit tighter. And I love this description of the music in the city, that the music was quicker and bouncy.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
It got louder. Yep, absolutely.
So we're going to move on to our next place, our next section. We're going to talk about representing ideas on television. So as we touched on earlier, it's more than just places that are represented in the media. We can share ideas with audiences through television as well. Now, Jo at the ACTF is going to share some thoughts on this with us. She's going to discuss why it's important to think critically about ideas being represented in television, both when we're viewing TV and when we're creating our own media.
Hi, I'm Jo, another member of the development team at the Australian Children's Television Foundation. I also write for TV, and I write children's books. Paul just spoke about representation of place in television, but entertainment media also communicates ideas that are less visible and less obvious than place. Sustainability, for example, or freedom, equality, and gender. Now, our experiences, values, attitudes, and beliefs all contribute to our perspective on different ideas, and these perspectives can be shared through media representations. It's important to think critically about the representation of ideas we see on screen and how this might impact audiences. For example, if all prime ministers and TV were played by women actors, This might subtly tell the audience who should be Prime Minister in real life and the type of careers that women should have. As a relatable example, let's consider representations of school on screen. And when school features as a place in a piece of media, the creator of that media will have made lots of decisions about how it will be represented. They'll have decided whether the school is set in an old building or a new one, whether it's brightly lit or dark, and whether there's a big playground or just a little one, and how the characters feel about being there. They'll decide how the actors playing the students and the teachers look, dress, deliver their lines, and behave. And they'll decide what sorts of props are used, like whether the desks in the classroom are in lines or whether they're in groups, or whether there's brightly coloured artwork on the walls or if the walls are just plain. How a creator shows life at school in a piece of media might also depend on what their own feelings about school were when they were your age, whether they liked it or they didn't, or where they went to school and when. All the decisions that the creator makes can determine how an audience will think and feel about school too. So even though we watch media, entertainment media for fun, it can still communicate ideas with us as an audience. And it can contain bias too, just like news media.
Welcome back, everybody. Jo had some great tips for how to think critically about the ideas being represented on TV. Now we're going to have a look at two clips which represent school in very different ways. The first one is from Little Lunch, and the second one is from a show called Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors? So as you watch these two different representations of school, have a think about what's being communicated about the experience of going to school in these clips.
Last Friday, just before Little Lunch, we were doing my most favourite thing.
Organising your pencil case?
We were doing my second most favourite thing, dictation.
A bushfire is a terrible natural disaster. A bushfire is a terrible
Natural disaster.
Is that someone's jumper? It looks like it's about to rain.
It's about to rain. It was funny because we were right in the middle of a dictation about bushfires, but suddenly it was the opposite of a bushfire. Really suddenly.
Poor Mrs. Gotcha had got soaked.
Mrs. Gotcha was wet from head to toe, and she was shivering and shaking. So I said, can we go out in the rain too?
You think this looks like fun, Rory?
Yes.
All picky boys went to night school. It was compulsory. After class, Robert was given a brass token. At the beginning of the week, Robert had to hand in at least 4 of these tokens to his shift boss if he wanted to work. Because Robert's family relied on the extra money he made, Robert had no choice, and neither did Jack and Michaela.
This is Moonta Mine School, and today's lesson will be spelling. Now, your first word. The inkwells were made of porcelain. Porcelain. The next word. The desks are covered in lacquer. Lacquer. The next one. The boys were kept separate from the girls. Separate. That's a bit messy, isn't it? Next word. The teacher enforced strict discipline in the schoolroom. Discipline. You're writing a bit better now? Very good, very good. Now, this is the punishment for erratic behaviour. Do we know what it is? It is the cane. And it hurts.
I'm sure you'll agree they're two very different representations of school, and I think I know which one I would rather attend. So the clips are both taken from entertainment media, but the different creators wanted the viewers to have different reactions. So take a moment to record your thoughts on these representations and your response as an audience member. So jot your ideas on your worksheet if you have one, or you can just discuss the clips with your partner next to you. And we'd like to hear your ideas in the chat. We'll take 3 minutes again for this quick task, and you might like to share your ideas with us when you've finished. We've also given you a challenge. We would like you to create your very own establishing shot. So do you remember when we look at Dance Academy, there were 2 establishing shots we showed you, one of the house and one of the helicopter view of the harbour. We would like you to imagine that you're creating your own show of your school, and how would you like that show to start? What would the establishing shot look like? So draw that in the box that we've given you. If you don't have a worksheet, just draw it on a sheet of paper. You've got 3 minutes to do this task, starting from now.
Thanks, everybody. I know you've been busy jotting down your answers during that break there. One thing I noticed straight away was the difference in the relationships between the teachers and the students. So Mrs. Goncha and her students were very, they seemed to have an equal relationship and be quite friendly with each other. But in the olden days school in Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors, it was very strict, and you could tell the teacher was the boss. It wasn't collaborative at all.
And she had a cane to whip them if they got out of line.
That's a bit
so that
scary.
was a bit scary.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the creators must have been trying to show that school was a scary experience back in the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I can see someone here has said, that there was lots of colour in the Little Lunch, true, full of all their artwork. So obviously students' ideas and their schoolwork was valued, whereas in the Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors was entirely brown, timber, very boring and dull, and austere and quite dark. So there was a lot of light in Little Lunch as opposed to really dark. And like you said, that really feeds into that idea of school being a scary place where you get punished and forced to do things that perhaps you don't enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting, they were both showing dictation, but it was a very different representation of that task, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. I'm glad times have changed.
Yes, me too. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to look at our last segment for today. We're going to look at representing people on screen. It's really important to think critically about how people are represented on screen. When people, communities or cultures are shown in an inauthentic way, this can create or reinforce stereotypes, which is something you may have heard about before at school. So stereotypes can be dangerous because they can continue misconceptions about groups of people. And so that's one of the power to influence that the media has. We're going to hear from our next ACTF expert, Lee Kim, about some considerations for when you're representing people on screen. And then we're going to examine a representation of some people that you should have great insight on. It's Year 5 and 6 students.
Hi, my name's Lee Kim. I'm a development manager at the ACTF. I've worked on shows like The PM's Daughter, Built to Survive, and 100% Wolf. When representing different people on screen, it's important to avoid stereotypes and create three-dimensional characters. Think about how you, your friends and family would want to be seen on screen as a good guide. Always aim for authenticity. If you do want to write a story about someone who's very different from you, then you might want to do some research or ask to speak to someone with that lived experience. An even better way would be to collaborate with that person and create something together. In the past, the media has been a bit exclusive and from one point of view. Now there's a push to make TV, films, games, all media more diverse and inclusive. Writers and directors want to show a wide range of people on screen from different countries, different cultures, of different abilities and different genders. This diversity is great, but we also need to make sure that these people are getting to tell their own stories. Nothing about us without us is a saying that can be related to the media industry, where you can't tell a story about a minority group without those people having input in every stage of the process. Finally, some things to think about when you're creating your own media projects. Think, are my characters well-rounded and three-dimensional? Have I avoided stereotypes? Am I creating an authentic character that is either from my own lived experience or from research or from collaboration?
So wonderful to hear those insights and tips from Lee Kim. Now we're going to show you a clip of investigators, and we want you to really think about those ideas that Lee Kim talked about as far as avoiding stereotypes and representing people on screen.
Hey guys, what's happening?
Kyle, where have you been? We arranged to meet at 8 o'clock.
Oh, this morning? Thought you meant 8 o'clock tonight. Yeah, sorry, I slept in. What did I miss?
Kelly hired us to solve a crime.
I lost a bracelet.
Not that, an actual crime. That's happening in Mr. Barker's pop quiz.
Morty said she didn't want to say anything else until we had seen the pop quiz in action.
See the pop quiz in action? How are we supposed to do that? We're not in Mr. Barker's class.
I know. We go into the grade 6 classroom every Friday to collect the lunch orders. Fridays are the busiest day for lunch orders because your mum and dad have run out of energy and let you order whatever you like. Pixie and I are the lunch order monitors, but I needed to take Morty instead.
How many syllables? Well, good morning, Miss Miller. How lovely to see you on lunch order duty.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Pixie couldn't come because she lost a bracelet.
Okay. Not sure I understand the connection. Anyway, back to the quiz. How many syllables in a haiku?
Kelly's main competition was Abby from Diane's team. She writes the On This Day history blog on our school website. Abby is really good at making old stuff seem fun.
A.
That's Abby there.
100.
Where are the others in her team?
B. 4.
That's Paul with the glasses.
C. 17.
And that's Xavier next to him.
Or D.
Morty walked over to Diane's table, which was annoying because she was upsetting my lunch order collecting routine.
Okay, another English question. Which one of these plays was written by William Shakespeare? A. Harry McClary from Donaldson's Dairy.
Hey, can you move?
B. Lord of the Flies.
Move, please.
C. Romeo and Juliet.
Move!
D. The Hunger Games. Turn your boards! Correct, Kelly, it's C!
That's when I noticed something about Diane's team. They were rude. Also, they got an answer wrong, so they didn't get every answer right like Kelly had said. But I mainly noticed that they were rude.
Mr. Barker, can you tell the grade 5s to get out?
Some of you might have enjoyed The Investigators and even seen that episode. I know I have enjoyed it. And we can't wait to hear what you think about this representation of your own age group. Let us know in the chat. Do you think Year 5 and 6s were represented accurately, or were they represented inaccurately? Were there any stereotypes that you saw? And maybe just take a few minutes now to write down your ideas and discuss these ideas with your friends about the clips. And as always, pop your responses into the chat. We're going to give you another short 3-minute break to discuss what you thought about the representation of grade 5 and 6 in the Investigators clip.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm so interested to hear what you think of that representation of Year 5 and 6 students, because it is an age group that's represented a lot in children's TV, and I wonder whether you think producers are getting it right or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think there were some stereotypes maybe of, you know, the super smart kid or the super sporty kid.
Yeah,
we
the
have some
disorganised boy who slept in.
Yeah, that's true. So we did have some stereotypes in that representation. I know that we're focusing on students, but I bet teachers are interested in representations of teachers as well.
That's true, yeah.
So I think today we've had a good look at representations of places, ideas and people on screen. And that just about brings us to the end of our session. Please pop in any extra ideas that you have in the chat. We'd love to know them. But if not, we'll continue going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you all for joining us today. You've shown some really strong media literacy skills already in your answers in the chat, and I hope that you've learnt some skills you can apply in your future watching of media and in your creating media as well. And teachers, we would really love your feedback on today's session. We're going to pop a link in the chat to a short survey you could give us your feedback with. And one more message before we go. We did want to acknowledge it's also another special day today on top of Media Literacy Week. Teachers in Australia are celebrating World Teachers Day. So we want to say a very big thank you to all the teachers who have joined us. We all think teachers are the best.
Teachers are the best.
Thank you for all the great work that you're doing with your students.
Absolutely. We'd also like to just quickly acknowledge that this virtual workshop was possible because of funding from that the ACTF and ACMI received from the Victorian Department of Education's Strategic Partnership Program. And give a big thank you to Bridget and Simon, who are behind the camera. And thank you all for taking part today. And we really hope that you take some of these media literacy skills that we've talked about today and apply them next time you're watching a show, thinking about what are the messages that have been deliberately and the representations that have been created here to influence me as an audience member. And perhaps when you're making a film or an animation next, you might just start to think critically about what choices you're making and how that's going to influence your audience when they watch your show. So thanks again. Hopefully we'll see you at our next virtual workshop. Until then, enjoy Media Literacy Week. See you later.
Bye.